close your eyes and let your breathing slow. Take a deep, gentle breath in and let it out slowly, releasing all the tensions of the modern world. Tonight we journey back through time to witness one of history's greatest dramas, the twilight struggle of the Roman Republic, when words became weapons, when oratory was warfare, and when the fate of civilization hung in the balance between order and chaos. Feel yourself drifting back through the centuries, past empires risen and fallen, past the birth of nations, past the Renaissance masters who looked to Rome for inspiration. Back, ever back, to the final decades of the 1st century BC, to a time when the Mediterranean was a Roman lake, when marble gleamed under the Italian sun, when the greatest minds of antiquity gathered in Senate houses and forums to debate the future of the world. Let the sounds of the modern world fade away completely. The hum of electricity, the rumble of traffic, the chatter of electronic voices, all of these dissolve into silence, and listen instead to the ancient sounds of the Roman Forum, the gentle echo of sandaled feet on marble steps, the rustle of togas in the morning breeze, the measured cadence of Latin oratory rising and falling like ocean waves against the shore. Picture Rome in the year 60 BC, a city of 1 million souls, the largest metropolis the world has ever known. Rising from the banks of the yellow Tiber, the 7 hills stretch toward the sky like fingers reaching for the gods. The Palatine Hill, crowned with the mansions of the wealthy and powerful. The Capitoline, where Jupiter's temple watches over the eternal city. The Aventine, where common citizens dwell in towering apartment blocks that sway in the wind. This is a Rome trembling on the edge of transformation, where ancient traditions clash with new realities, where the government designed for a city-state struggles to rule an empire spanning 3 continents, where ambitious men scheme in marble halls while philosophers debate the nature of justice and power. It is a world pregnant with possibility and heavy with doom, where every decision echoes through the corridors of eternity. In the pre-dawn darkness, the city slowly awakens, slaves padding softly through colonnaded courtyards, their bare feet making whispered music on floors polished to mirror brightness. Water carriers beginning their rounds, bronze amphora balanced gracefully on strong shoulders, bakers lighting their ovens, the scent of fresh bread beginning to drift through narrow streets still cool with night air. But this morning is different from all others, for today marks the beginning of a struggle that will reshape the Roman world. Today, 3 of Rome's most powerful men will meet in secret, forging an alliance that will make a mockery of republican institutions. Today, the first triumvirate is born, and with it, the forces that will ultimately destroy the government they claim to serve. The Forum Romanum lies in gentle shadow, its basilicas and temples waiting for the day's business to begin. Here senators will debate, here orators will thunder, here the voice of the Roman people will rise in acclamation or condemnation. For this great rectangular space is more than mere architecture. It is the beating heart of republican government, the stage where democracy and aristocracy perform their eternal dance. At the center of it all stands the Curia Julia, the Senate House, where 300 of Rome's most distinguished citizens gather to guide the Republic. These are men whose ancestors conquered the world, whose names echo with ancient glory. whose very presence embodies the accumulated wisdom of centuries. Yet they face challenges that no generation before them has confronted: the government of a world empire with the institutions of a city-state. Feel yourself becoming part of this ancient place. Breathe the air that Cicero breathed. Walk the marble floors where Caesar's footsteps once echoed. Rest in the knowledge that you are about to witness one of history's greatest intellectual duels. The clash between Caesar's pragmatic ambition and Cicero's principled opposition. Between the future that demands change and the past that resists it. Between the man who would be king and the orator who would preserve the republic. Let your breathing settle into the rhythm of ancient time. Slow, peaceful, eternal. There is no hurry in this story, no urgent deadlines or pressing appointments. Only the patient unfolding of destiny, the gradual revelation of how words can be as powerful as swords, how ideas can topple empires, how one man's voice, raised in defense of principle, can echo through the ages long after the marble crumbles and the bronze corrodes. Chapter 1. The young Cicero, shaping the voice of the Republic. To understand the great confrontation between Caesar and the Senate, we must first know the man who would become the Republic's most eloquent defender, Marcus Tullius Cicero, born not in Rome itself, but in the hill town of Arpinum, a place that produced another great Roman, Gaius Marius. But where Marius won fame through military conquest, young Cicero will achieve immortality through the power of words. Picture Arpinum as it was in 106 BC, when Cicero drew his first breath. A small municipium nestled in the Volscian hills, olive groves cascading down terraced slopes, vineyards heavy with grapes that will become wine for Roman tables, streams that sing as they tumble toward the distant sea. It is a place of ancient beauty and simple virtue, where traditional Roman values still flourish far from the corruption of the capital. Cicero's family belongs to the equestrian order, the Roman middle class, wealthy enough to provide excellent education for their sons, but lacking the ancestral glory of the great patrician houses. His father, a quiet man of scholarly inclinations, recognizes early that his eldest son possesses an extraordinary gift, a voice that can charm birds from trees and convince stones to weep, a mind that absorbs knowledge like a sponge absorbs water. The boy's education begins at home, with a Greek tutor who introduces him to the treasures of Hellenic culture, Homer's epics that tell of heroes whose glory outlasts their mortal frames, Plato's dialogues that explore the nature of justice and truth, Demosthenes' orations that demonstrate how eloquence can move mountains and topple tyrants. Young Cicero devours these works with hungry enthusiasm, memorizing entire speeches, analyzing every rhetorical device, learning the alchemy that transforms mere words into golden persuasion. By the age of 16, Cicero has outgrown provincial instruction. His family sends him to Rome for advanced study, where he attends the lectures of the greatest teachers of the age, Apollonius Molon of Rhodes, who will later train Julius Caesar, Philo of Larissa, the last head of Plato's academy, Diodotus the Stoic, whose philosophical teachings will shape Cicero's understanding of duty and honor throughout his life. Picture young Cicero in the great schools of Rome, a thin, intense youth with burning eyes and restless energy. He sits among the sons of senators and princes, listening to masters who have studied in Athens and Alexandria, absorbing not just technical knowledge, but the broader vision of what it means to be civilized, what it means to use reason rather than force, what it means to serve something greater than oneself. The Rome of Cicero's youth is already showing signs of the tensions that will eventually tear it apart. In the streets, veterans of Marius's armies mutter about promised land grants that never materialize. In the Senate House, aristocrats debate how to govern territories they have never seen. In the law courts, clever advocates use technicalities to free obvious criminals, while honest men languish in poverty. The old certainties are crumbling, and thoughtful observers wonder what will replace them. Cicero's first glimpse of this moral crisis comes during the Social War, when Rome's Italian allies take up arms to demand the citizenship they have long been promised. The young student watches in horror as Roman armies march against Italian cities, as former allies become bitter enemies, as the very foundations of Roman power reveal their fragility. It is a lesson he will never forget, that even the mightiest state depends ultimately on the consent of the governed. But it is the dictatorship of Sulla that truly shapes Cicero's understanding of political power and its dangers. In 82 BC, when Cicero is 24 years old, Lucius Cornelius Sulla marches on Rome and makes himself absolute master of the state. The proscription lists that follow, posting the names of citizens marked for death, transform Roman politics from debate into survival, from persuasion into terror. Picture the Forum during Sulla's reign, the rostra decorated with the severed heads of Rome's greatest orators. Sulpicius, who once moved audiences to tears with his eloquence. Antistius, whose wit made even enemies smile. Carbo, whose voice could charm birds from trees, all silenced forever by the dictator's swords, their heads mounted like hunting trophies to warn others of the price of opposition. Young Cicero witnesses this carnage with the eye of an artist studying his craft. He sees how quickly civilized discourse can degenerate into savage violence, how easily the rule of law can become the rule of force, how desperately Rome needs voices willing to speak for justice and reason. The proscription lists teach him that in politics, silence is not neutrality, but complicity, that good men must speak, or evil men will triumph. When Sulla finally retires to private life, leaving behind a restored but traumatized republic, Cicero makes his debut in the law courts. His first major case comes in 80 BC, the defense of Sextus Roscius of Ameria, a young man accused of murdering his father. It is a case that no established advocate will touch, for the real killers are Sulla's freedmen, powerful figures who have grown rich on confiscated property and judicial corruption. The trial becomes Cicero's introduction to Roman society, and Rome's introduction to a new kind of orator, standing before the judges in the Basilica Julia, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the great hall. Cicero does more than defend his client. He indicts an entire system of corruption, speaks truth to power with a courage that astonishes even his supporters. "Judges," he begins, his voice steady despite his youth, "we are here to decide not merely the guilt or innocence of one young man, but whether justice still exists in our republic, whether the law protects all citizens equally, or whether some men are so powerful that they can commit murder with impunity and blame their victims for the crime." The speech becomes a sensation. For here is a young provincial, unknown and unconnected, daring to challenge the sullen establishment that has ruled Rome through terror. His eloquence is polished, but not affected, passionate but not hysterical. He marshals facts like a general deploys troops, builds arguments like an architect constructs temples. And when the moment comes for emotional appeal, his voice carries such conviction that even hostile judges lean forward to listen. But perhaps most remarkably, Cicero wins his case. Roscius is acquitted, the corrupt freedmen are exposed, and Rome discovers that it has a new champion of justice. The victory launches Cicero's career and establishes his reputation as an advocate who cannot be bought or intimidated, who will defend the innocent regardless of the danger to himself. Yet success brings its own perils. Cicero's victory over Sulla's men makes him enemies among the powerful. Men who whisper that this upstart provincial needs to be taught his place, who suggest that further defiance might result in unfortunate accidents. Wisely, Cicero decides that a period of foreign travel would be prudent, ostensibly to continue his rhetorical education, actually to let political temperatures cool. The journey takes him to Greece and Asia Minor, where he studies with the masters who trained his teachers. At Athens, he walks in the footsteps of Demosthenes and Pericles, seeing the monuments of the civilization that gave birth to democracy and philosophy. At Rhodes, he perfects his technique under Apollonius Molon, learning to moderate his youthful enthusiasm with mature judgment, discovering that true eloquence comes not from volume, but from the perfect marriage of thought and expression. But it is also during this Eastern sojourn that Cicero encounters his first taste of real political corruption. In the cities of Asia Minor, he sees Roman governors who treat their provinces like personal kingdoms, who sell justice to the highest bidder and regard their subjects as sheep to be sheared. The contrast with republican ideals is stark and disturbing, a preview of the challenges that await him back in Rome. When Cicero returns to Rome in 77 BC, he finds a city transformed by his absence. Pompey has crushed Spartacus's slave rebellion and won enormous popularity. Crassus has used his wealth to build political influence. Caesar, though still young, is already marked as a rising star. The delicate balance of republican government is shifting, and thoughtful observers wonder whether the old system can survive the pressures of governing a world empire. Cicero throws himself into his legal practice with renewed energy, defending clients who cannot defend themselves, prosecuting governors who abuse their power, building a reputation as Rome's most honest advocate. His house on the Palatine becomes a gathering place for intellectuals and idealists, men who still believe in the possibility of good government, who think that reason and eloquence can triumph over corruption and violence. But even as his practice flourishes, Cicero begins to understand the deeper currents reshaping Roman politics. The rise of powerful generals who owe their loyalty to their armies rather than the state. The growth of urban masses who can be swayed by bread and circuses. The increasing powerlessness of traditional institutions in the face of personal ambition. He sees that the Republic faces a crisis that no amount of oratory can solve. Yet he also believes that voices raised in defense of principle can at least preserve the memory of what Rome once was. His greatest early triumph comes in 70 BC with his prosecution of Gaius Verres, the corrupt governor of Sicily. It is a case that will make Cicero's reputation and establish his place among Rome's greatest orators. For Verres represents everything wrong with Roman administration, a man who has plundered his province systematically, who has sold justice like a commodity, who has treated Roman citizens like barbarians. The trial becomes an epic confrontation between old corruption and new integrity. Verres, defended by Hortensius, Rome's most fashionable advocate, a man whose flowery style has dominated the courts for decades. Cicero, the provincial upstart whose plain-spoken eloquence cuts through rhetorical ornament to expose naked truth. The outcome will determine not just one man's fate, but the direction of Roman justice itself. Picture the scene as Cicero rises to deliver his opening statement. The Basilica, Julia packed with spectators, senators and equities crowding the marble benches, common citizens straining to hear every word, the air thick with anticipation, the crowd buzzing with whispered speculation about whether this young prosecutor can defeat the master of Roman oratory. Citizens of Rome, Cicero begins, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the Basilica. Today we judge not merely the crimes of one man, but the health of our entire system of government. Are our provinces to be the private hunting grounds of corrupt governors? Are our allies to suffer in silence while their oppressors grow rich on stolen gold? Are we to be a republic that protects its citizens, or an empire that devours them? The case becomes a masterpiece of forensic oratory. For days, Cicero presents a devastating catalogue of Verres's crimes. His evidence is meticulously prepared, his witnesses carefully chosen, his arguments built with the precision of a master architect. But beyond the technical brilliance lies something deeper, a moral passion that transforms legal advocacy into crusade for justice. When the trial ends with Verres' conviction and exile, Rome recognizes that it has witnessed something extraordinary. Not just the defeat of corruption, but the emergence of a new kind of political leadership. Leadership based not on military conquest or inherited wealth, but on intellectual superiority and moral authority. Cicero has proven that in the Republic of Laws, the pen can indeed be mightier than the sword. Rest now in the rhythm of ancient eloquence, the careful cadence of well-crafted sentences, the rising and falling of voices trained to move human hearts. Feel the power of words to shape opinion, to create justice, to build the foundations of civilized society. Let the sounds of Roman oratory wash over you, the measured periods, the calculated pauses, the crescendo that lifts audiences to their feet and carries them into the current of history. Chapter 2. The Consulship, Cicero's Finest Hour. The year 63 BC dawns with portents and omens that trouble every Roman heart. Lightning strikes Jupiter's temple on the Capitoline Hill. Sacred chickens refuse their grain. Soothsayers peer into sheep's entrails and shake their heads in dismay. The gods themselves seem troubled by what they see in Rome's future. And well they might be, for this year will bring the Republic its greatest test since Hannibal crossed the Alps. Picture Rome as Cicero begins his consulship, the highest office in the Republican system, the culmination of a career built on eloquence and integrity. He is 43 years old, at the peak of his intellectual powers, recognized even by his enemies as the greatest orator of the age. Yet he faces challenges that would daunt a Scipio or a Pompey. for the very foundations of the state are crumbling beneath the weight of ambition and corruption. The consular elections of 64 BC had been a revelation of how far Roman politics has fallen from ancient ideals. Cicero's opponents were Gaius Antonius Hybrida, a man so corrupt that even Romans found his venality shocking, and Lucius Sergius Catilina, called Catiline, a patrician of ancient lineage whose debts and desperation have driven him to embrace revolution. That such men could even seek the Republic's highest office shows how deeply the rot has spread. But Cicero's victory represents more than personal triumph. It marks the first time in Roman history that a new man, a homo novus without consular ancestors, has reached the consulship purely through merit. Through the power of his voice and the force of his character, he has broken the monopoly of the great patrician houses, proven that in the Republic of Laws, talent can triumph over birth, eloquence over ancestry. Yet even as Cicero savors his electoral victory, dark clouds gather on the political horizon. Catiline, defeated but not destroyed, nurses his grievances like a serpent coiled in winter. Around him gather the desperate and the disaffected, bankrupt aristocrats who have squandered their patrimony on luxury and vice, urban masses who blame their poverty on the system itself, veterans who remember promises of land that were never fulfilled. The conspiracy that forms around Catiline represents more than personal ambition. It is the Republic's nightmare made manifest, the marriage of aristocratic entitlement with popular resentment, the alliance of those who have too much to lose with those who have nothing left to lose. It is revolution wrapped in the toga of tradition, chaos disguised as reform. Cicero first becomes aware of the danger through whispered warnings, anonymous letters left at his door, cryptic messages from informants who dare not show their faces. Gradually, piece by piece, he assembles a picture that chills his republican heart. Secret meetings in suburban villas, weapons cached in hidden locations, lists of prominent citizens marked for death. The conspiracy threatens not just political change, but the complete destruction of Roman civilization. Picture Cicero in his study during those anxious autumn nights of 63 BC. Oil lamps casting dancing shadows on papyrus scrolls. The great orator bent over reports from his network of informants, his face grave with the weight of knowledge that he alone possesses. For he has learned that Catiline plans not just to seize power, but to burn Rome itself, to reduce the eternal city to ashes and build something new from the ruins. The evidence is fragmentary but terrifying. Catiline has sent agents to Gaul to raise troops among the Celtic tribes. He has promised his followers the cancellation of all debts, the redistribution of property, the elimination of the Republic's traditional leaders. It is a program that appeals to every discontented element in Roman society, from bankrupt senators to landless peasants, from urban slaves to provincial rebels. But gathering evidence is one thing, acting upon it another. Catiline is a Roman citizen of noble birth, protected by law and custom. To move against him requires proof so overwhelming that even his supporters cannot deny it. And proof is precisely what Cicero lacks. He knows what Catiline plans, but cannot prove it in a court of law. He faces the terrible choice between action and inaction, between violating legal procedures and allowing the Republic to burn. The crisis comes to a head in early November, when Cicero's spies report that Catiline plans to have the consul assassinated at the upcoming Senate meeting. The plot is simple but effective. Hired killers will strike as Cicero enters the Curia, creating chaos that will allow Catiline to seize control of the government. With the Republic's greatest orator silenced, opposition to the conspiracy will collapse. Cicero's response reveals both his courage and his cunning. Instead of fleeing or calling for military protection, he decides to confront Catiline directly in the Senate House before the assembled representatives of the Roman people. He will use his greatest weapon, his voice, to expose the conspiracy and rally the Republic's defenders. It is a gamble that stakes everything on his ability to move human hearts through the power of eloquence. The morning of November 8th dawns grey and cold, with clouds that seem to mirror the somber mood of the city. Word has spread that something momentous will happen in the Senate, that Cicero has called for an emergency session, that Catiline himself plans to attend. The Curia fills early, senators taking their ivory chairs with unusual solemnity, aware that they are about to witness history in the making. When Catiline enters the chamber, the effect is electric. This is the man many suspect of plotting against the state, yet here he sits among the Republic's most honored citizens, wearing the toga that marks him as a Roman gentleman, protected by laws he seeks to destroy. His very presence is an affront to everything the Senate represents, yet legal proof of his guilt remains frustratingly elusive. Cicero rises to speak, and from his first words, it becomes clear that this will be no ordinary senatorial address. His voice carries across the marble chamber with the force of divine judgment, his gestures precise and powerful, his every phrase calculated to maximum effect. This is oratory raised to the level of art, persuasion transformed into poetry, the marriage of perfect technique with passionate conviction. How long, Catiline, will you abuse our patience? The opening words ring through the chamber like trumpet calls. How long will your madness mock us? To what lengths will your unbridled audacity go? The questions hang in the air like accusations, each one driving deeper into the conspiracy's heart, establishing from the outset that this is no mere political disagreement, but a moral crusade. Sentence by sentence, Cicero builds his case, not through dry recitation of evidence, for legal proof remains elusive, but through the accumulated weight of circumstantial detail, the pattern of suspicious behavior, the logic of guilt that any reasonable man can see. He speaks of midnight meetings, of weapons gathered, of the city's danger, painting a picture so vivid that even Catiline's supporters begin to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Do you not see that your plot is exposed? Cicero continues, his voice rising with controlled passion. Do you not realize that your conspiracy is known to all these men? Which of us do you think ignorant of what you did last night, where you went, whom you summoned, what plans you made? Each question is a dagger thrust, each accusation a step closer to the truth that everyone suspects, but none can prove. The effect on the Senate is immediate and profound. Senators who had maintained careful neutrality find themselves drawn into Cicero's moral vision. The chamber fills with murmurs of agreement. with the rustle of togas as men lean forward to catch every word. Even Catiline's supporters begin to edge away from their leader, sensing the tide turning against him. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the speech is its restraint. Cicero could have called for Catiline's immediate arrest, could have demanded his execution without trial. Instead, he appeals to the conspiracy's leader to leave Rome voluntarily, to spare the city the trauma of civil conflict. It is magnanimity in victory, the gesture of a man who understands that true strength lies not in crushing enemies, but in offering them a path to honorable retreat. Go then, Cicero concludes, his voice now soft with what seems like genuine regret. Go into exile, relieve the Republic of its fear. Purge the city of your presence. The walls of Rome herself seem to speak and say, too long has this conspiracy been nurtured within these walls. Too long has it threatened our peace. It is time for it to depart. The speech becomes known to history as the First Catilinarian, the opening salvo in Cicero's campaign to save the Republic through the power of words alone. Its immediate effect is to isolate Catiline completely, to make his continued presence in Rome politically impossible. Within days, the conspiracy's leader flees the city, heading north to join the rebel armies gathering in Etruria. His departure marking the first victory of law over lawlessness. But Catiline's flight only transforms the crisis. It does not end it. The conspiracy continues under new leadership, now directed by Lentulus Sura, a former consul whose aristocratic connections make him even more dangerous than his predecessor. The plot evolves as well, becoming more sophisticated, more careful, more likely to succeed. Rome's danger has not passed. It has merely taken new form. The second phase of the conspiracy reveals the international dimensions of the threat. Lentulus has contacted Gallic ambassadors visiting Rome, seeking to involve Celtic tribes in the rebellion, to coordinate uprisings across the empire, to transform what began as domestic revolution into imperial civil war. The scope of the plot now becomes clear. This is not mere political change, but an attempt to destroy Roman civilization itself. Cicero's response demonstrates his growing mastery of both oratory and statecraft. Working with his fellow consul Antonius, he creates a network of informants and agents that penetrates the conspiracy at every level. He learns of secret meetings, intercepts coded messages, identifies weapons caches and safe houses. Most importantly, he gathers the kind of concrete evidence that has thus far eluded him. Proof that will stand up in a court of law. The breakthrough comes when Cicero's agents intercept letters from the conspirators to the Gallic ambassadors, documents that provide irrefutable evidence of treason, written in the conspirators' own hands, sealed with their personal seals, containing explicit plans for the destruction of Rome. The letters are exactly what Cicero needs to move from accusation to action, from suspicion to certainty. Picture the scene as Cicero presents this evidence to the Senate. The morning sun streams through the curia's windows, illuminating faces tense with anticipation. The consul rises with the captured letters in his hand, these pieces of papyrus that contain the fate of empires. His voice is calm now, no longer passionate but coldly factual, for the evidence speaks louder than any oratory. Conscript fathers, he begins, I hold in my hands the proof of what we have long suspected. Here are letters, written by the conspirators themselves, revealing their plans to destroy our city, to murder our citizens, to invite foreign enemies into Italy. Let these documents speak, for they convict their authors more surely than any accusation. One by one, the letters are read aloud, each revelation drawing gasps of horror from the assembled senators. Here is Lentulus promising the Gauls rich rewards for their support. There is Cethegus detailing plans to massacre Rome's leading citizens. Beyond doubt or denial, the conspiracy stands exposed in all its murderous ambition. The debate that follows reveals the depth of division within Roman society. Some senators call for immediate execution of the conspirators, arguing that traitors forfeit all rights to legal protection. Others insist on proper trials, maintaining that even revolution does not justify abandoning the rule of law. The argument rages for hours, with Cicero caught between justice and legality, between the need to act and the duty to preserve constitutional procedures. It is Julius Caesar who provides the most surprising intervention, rising to speak in defense of legal process. The future dictator argues eloquently for the conspirators' right to trial. His motives are complex, partly genuine belief in republican procedures, partly calculation that extremism will serve his own political interests. But his speech forces Cicero to confront the possibility that mercy might be more politic than justice. But it is Marcus Porcius Cato who carries the day. The stern defender of republican tradition rises to speak with all the moral authority of his great ancestors. His words cut through the chamber's confusion like a sword through silk, establishing clearly that this is not a time for legal niceties, but for decisive action, that the Republic's survival depends on crushing treason completely and immediately. Conscript fathers, Cato thunders, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of Roman tradition. We debate while Rome burns. We speak of legal procedures while traitors sharpen their daggers. The choice before us is simple. Act now to preserve our republic, or debate until it no longer exists to protect. The Senatus Consultum Ultimum that follows authorizes Cicero to take whatever action necessary to preserve the state. It is the Republic's nuclear option, used only in moments of supreme crisis, granting the consul powers limited only by his own conscience and judgment. With this authority, Cicero orders the immediate execution of the conspirators, a decision that will haunt him for the rest of his life. The executions take place at sunset on December 5th in the Tullianum, Rome's ancient prison carved from living rock beneath the city. One by one, the conspirators are led down into darkness, men who had dreamed of ruling the world, now meeting their fate in a stone cell that has held criminals for centuries. Their deaths mark the end of the immediate threat, but also the beginning of new controversies about the limits of consular power. When the last conspirator has been executed, Cicero emerges from the prison into the gathering dusk. The forum is crowded with citizens who have waited anxiously for news. When they see their consul approaching, they burst into spontaneous cheering. Pater Patriae, they cry, Father of his country. It is a title that will follow Cicero to his grave, marking his finest hour, but also sealing his political fate. rest now in the weight of necessary choices, the burden of leadership in times of crisis, the price of preserving civilization against the forces of chaos. Feel the satisfaction of duty done despite personal cost, the knowledge that sometimes good men must make hard decisions. Let the echoes of ancient cheering fade into the gentle rhythm of your breath, carrying you towards sleep on the tide of history itself. Chapter 3. The Rise of the Triumvirate, Power Behind the Curtain. In the months following the Catilinarian conspiracy, as Rome slowly recovers from its brush with destruction, the city's political landscape undergoes a subtle but profound transformation. The crisis has revealed the Republic's fragility, shown how easily constitutional government can collapse when faced with determined enemies. But it has also demonstrated something else, that real power in Rome increasingly flows not through official channels, but through private arrangements between ambitious men. Picture Rome in the year 60 BC, a city of 1 million souls, the largest metropolis the world has ever known. Rising from the banks of the yellow Tiber, the 7 hills stretch toward the sky like fingers reaching for the gods. The Palatine Hill, crowned with the mansions of the wealthy and powerful. The Capitoline, where Jupiter's temple watches over the eternal city. The Aventine, where common citizens dwell in towering apartment blocks that sway in the wind. This is a Rome trembling on the edge of transformation, where ancient traditions clash with new realities, where the government designed for a city-state struggles to rule an empire spanning 3 continents, where ambitious men scheme in marble halls while philosophers debate the nature of justice and power. It is a world pregnant with possibility and heavy with doom, where every decision echoes through the corridors of eternity. In the pre-dawn darkness, the city slowly awakens. Slaves padding softly through colonnaded courtyards, their bare feet making whispered music on floors polished to mirror brightness. Water carriers beginning their rounds. Bronze amphora balanced gracefully on strong shoulders. Bakers lighting their ovens. The scent of fresh bread beginning to drift through narrow streets still cool with night air. But it is Caesar who provides the vision that transforms 3 individual ambitions into a coherent program. He understands that the Republic's traditional institutions are breaking down under the pressure of governing a world empire, that the old system of annual magistrates and collective decision-making cannot cope with the complexities of modern governance. What Rome needs, he argues, is not the restoration of ancient practices, but their replacement with something new. The genius of Caesar's proposal lies in its simplicity. Rather than attempting to overthrow the Republic openly, which would unite all opposition against them, the triumvirs will work within the existing system, using their combined influence to control elections, to direct legislation, to coordinate policy across multiple provinces. They will be the invisible government that makes the visible government work. The formal alliance is sealed not with written contracts, which could be discovered and used as evidence of conspiracy, but with the most personal of bonds, marriage. Caesar gives his daughter Julia in marriage to Pompey, creating a family connection that transforms political alliance into kinship. The wedding becomes one of the great social events of the Roman calendar, a celebration that marks not just the union of 2 individuals, but the birth of a new political order. Yet even as the triumvirate consolidates its power, opposition begins to form around the figure who will become its most eloquent critic, Marcus Tullius Cicero. Fresh from his triumph over the Catilinarian conspiracy, recognizes immediately what the secret alliance represents: not progress, but regression; not the solution to the Republic's problems, but their culmination. For the first time since his consulship, he faces a challenge that cannot be met with oratory alone. Picture Cicero in his villa at Tusculum during the spring of 59 BC, surrounded by his beloved books, Greek philosophy mixed with Roman law, Plato's Republic lying open beside the 12 tables. The great orator has retreated here to think, to analyze this new threat to republican government, to understand how three men can effectively rule Rome without holding any extraordinary offices. The answer, when it comes to him, is both simple and terrifying. The triumvirate succeeds because it recognizes that the Republic's institutions have become hollow shells, that real power now flows through personal relationships rather than official positions, that in a world where armies follow generals rather than the state, where wealth can buy elections, where provincial commands create private kingdoms, constitutional government has become impossible. Yet Cicero refuses to accept this analysis as final. His entire career has been built on the belief that reason can triumph over force, that eloquence can move hearts and change minds, that good men working within the system can preserve Republican values, even when Republican institutions fail. The triumvirate challenges everything he believes about politics and human nature, but it also presents him with the greatest opportunity of his career: the chance to be the voice of principled opposition. His first major speech against the new order comes during the debate over Caesar's land bill, legislation that would provide farms for Pompey's veterans by redistributing public land. On the surface, the proposal seems reasonable, even humanitarian. Veterans deserve reward for their service, and unused public land serves no one. But Cicero sees deeper implications: the creation of a new class of citizens who owe their prosperity directly to the triumvirs rather than to the state. Conscript fathers, Cicero begins, his voice carrying the authority earned through his defeat of Catiline. We are asked today to vote not merely on the distribution of land, but on the future of our republic. Do we wish to be governed by laws passed in the proper manner by representatives of the people? Or shall we bow to the private arrangements of powerful men who meet in secret and divide the world among themselves? The speech reveals Cicero at the height of his rhetorical powers. He dissects Caesar's legislation with surgical precision, exposing how seemingly innocent clauses create dangerous precedents, how reasonable provisions contain hidden mechanisms for future abuse, how popular measures can undermine the very institutions they claim to serve. It is a masterpiece of political analysis disguised as senatorial oratory. But the speech also reveals the limitations of traditional opposition. For all its brilliance, Cicero's rhetoric cannot overcome the simple reality of power. Caesar has the votes, Pompey has the veterans, Crassus has the money. The land bill passes despite opposition from the Republic's greatest orator, marking the first clear victory of the triumvirate over Republican institutions. The defeat teaches Cicero a bitter lesson about the new Rome emerging from the Republic's crisis. That eloquence without power is merely entertainment. That moral authority without institutional support becomes irrelevant. That in a world where might makes right, the voice of reason speaks to an ever-shrinking audience, yet he refuses to surrender, to join the triumvirate as other senators have done, to exchange his independence for a share of their success. Instead, Cicero embarks on a new phase of his career, using his unmatched rhetorical skills to create what we might call the loyal opposition. He attacks not the triumvirs personally, for that would invite destruction, but their methods, their secrecy, their contempt for republican traditions. He becomes the conscience of Rome, the voice that reminds citizens of what they are losing even as they gain security and prosperity. The campaign reaches its climax with the trial of Publius Clodius, a patrician turned populist whose violence and demagoguery exemplify everything wrong with the new politics. Clodius has been charged with sacrilege, with disguising himself as a woman to infiltrate the sacred rites of the good goddess. It is a scandal that rocks Roman society, but also an opportunity for Cicero to strike at the triumvirate's allies. Picture the courtroom as Cicero rises to prosecute, the basilica packed with senators and citizens eager to hear Rome's greatest orator demolish one of its most notorious criminals. Clodius himself sitting with his supporters, confident that his political connections will protect him from legal consequences. The very air crackling with tension between old virtue and new corruption. "Judges," Cicero begins, his voice cutting through the crowd's murmur like a bronze blade through silk. "Today we judge more than the guilt or innocence of one man. We decide whether Rome will be governed by law or by lawlessness, whether sacred traditions will be protected or profaned, whether citizens will be safe from those who would destroy everything our ancestors built." The prosecution becomes a devastating indictment not just of Clodius, but of the entire system that produced him. Cicero traces the connections between personal corruption and political violence, shows how the breakdown of republican institutions enables men like Clodius to terrorize honest citizens, demonstrates that the choice facing Rome is not between competing policies, but between civilization and barbarism. Yet even this brilliant performance cannot overcome the triumvirate's influence. Clodius is acquitted, his supporters celebrating in the streets while honest Romans shake their heads in dismay. The verdict sends a clear message that in the new Rome, political connections matter more than evidence, that the triumvirs can protect their allies regardless of their crimes, that justice itself has become a commodity to be bought and sold. The acquittal marks a turning point in Cicero's relationship with the triumvirate. No longer content to attack their methods, he begins to question their very legitimacy, to suggest that private compacts between powerful men represent a form of conspiracy against the state, to argue that good Romans have a duty to resist illegal authority regardless of its popular support. But such defiance comes at a terrible price. Within months of the Clodius trial, Cicero finds himself under attack from the very man he failed to convict. Clodius has been elected tribune, giving him the power to propose legislation, to call assemblies, to threaten enemies with prosecution. He immediately introduces a bill that would exile anyone who has executed Roman citizens without trial. Legislation clearly aimed at Cicero's handling of the Catilinarian conspirators. The crisis forces Cicero to confront the tragic irony of his situation, that his greatest triumph, the defeat of Catiline, has become the weapon his enemies use against him. That the very actions that earned him the title Father of his country now threaten to destroy him. That in the new Rome created by the triumvirate, even patriotic service offers no protection against political revenge. Picture Cicero on his final night in Rome, standing in the atrium of his house on the Palatine, surrounded by the busts of great orators and philosophers, the marble faces that have inspired his career now seeming to reproach him for his failure to preserve what they represented. Tomorrow he will leave for exile, abandoning the city he has served so faithfully, the republic he has tried so desperately to save. Yet even in defeat, Cicero refuses to despair. He understands that his exile represents more than personal tragedy. It marks the moment when the Roman Republic truly died, when the last independent voice was silenced, when the triumvirate's victory became complete. His departure from Rome is not surrender but testimony, proof that some values cannot be compromised, some principles cannot be abandoned, some voices cannot be bought. As dawn breaks over the 7 hills, as Cicero's litter disappears down the Appian Way, carrying him toward an uncertain future, the city he leaves behind seems unchanged. The same temples gleam in the morning sun, the same markets bustle with commerce, the same senators gather in the Curia to debate the day's business. But thoughtful observers know that something essential has been lost, that Rome without Cicero is no longer the Rome of their fathers. Rest now in the knowledge of principled resistance, the understanding that some defeats are more honorable than victory, the peace that comes from knowing that truth spoken remains true regardless of its immediate reception. Feel the weight of moral authority, the burden and privilege of being the voice that speaks for justice when justice has no other defender. Let the rhythm of ancient conflict fade into the gentle cadence of eternal values, carrying you deeper into the stream of history. Chapter 4: Caesar's Gallic Wars, the Making of a Conqueror. While Cicero languishes in exile, nursing his wounded pride and plotting his return, Julius Caesar embarks on the greatest military adventure in Roman history, the conquest of Gaul. It is a campaign that will transform him from clever politician into legendary general, from one member of a triumvirate into the most powerful man in the Roman world, from ambitious senator into the destroyer of the republic he claims to serve. Picture Caesar in the spring of 58 BC as he takes up his proconsular command. He is 42 years old, at the height of his political and physical powers. Already he has served as consul, survived the scandals of his youth, proven himself as clever as Cicero and as ruthless as Sulla. But military command in Gaul offers him something no civilian office can provide: the chance to win the kind of glory that makes men immortal. The Gallic provinces that Caesar inherits are a patchwork of Roman territory and allied kingdoms. Cisalpine Gaul, the rich lands between the Alps and the Po, has been Roman for generations, its cities prosperous, its citizens loyal. But beyond the Alps lies a different world, the vast forests and trackless marshes of free Gaul, home to dozens of Celtic tribes whose warriors have troubled Roman dreams since the sack of Rome 3 centuries before. Caesar's initial mandate is limited: to defend Roman allies, to maintain the existing balance of power, to prevent any single Gallic tribe from becoming strong enough to threaten Roman interests. It is the kind of routine provincial command that ambitious senators accept as stepping stones to greater things, offering modest opportunities for profit and glory, but little chance for the spectacular conquests that create legendary reputations. But Caesar sees possibilities where other commanders see only problems. The Gallic world is ripe for conquest, its tribes divided by ancient rivalries, its warriors brave but undisciplined, its leaders vulnerable to Roman gold and Roman promises. With the right combination of military skill and political cunning, a clever general could transform defensive operations into offensive campaigns, protection into conquest, routine administration into world-changing adventure. The opportunity comes when the Helvetii, a Swiss tribe pressed by Germanic invasions from the east, seek permission to migrate through Roman territory to new homes in Western Gaul. Their request seems reasonable, even humanitarian. A people fleeing barbarian oppression asks for safe passage through Roman lands. What civilized government could refuse such a plea? But Caesar recognizes immediately what this migration really represents. Not the movement of peaceful refugees, but the displacement of a warrior people who could destabilize all of Gaul. If the Helvetii settle in the west, they will push other tribes eastward, creating a domino effect of tribal movements that could threaten Roman territories. Better to stop them now, at the beginning of their journey, than to face the consequences later. Picture the scene as Caesar addresses his hastily assembled legions. Roman soldiers drawn up in perfect formation on the plains before Geneva, their bronze armor gleaming in the spring sunlight, their standards snapping in the alpine breeze. These are professional warriors, men who have served in Spain and Africa, veterans who understand that their general's success means their prosperity. Soldiers, Caesar begins, his voice carrying easily across the ranks. We face not merely a tribal migration, but a threat to everything Rome has built in Gaul. If we allow the Helvetii to pass, we invite chaos. We abandon our allies to barbarian raiders. We betray the trust that Rome has placed in us. Today we fight not for conquest, but for duty, not for glory, but for Rome. The speech reveals Caesar's genius for military motivation. He transforms what could be seen as Roman aggression into Roman virtue, presents offensive war as defensive necessity, frames imperial expansion as moral obligation. His soldiers march into battle believing they fight for civilization itself, their cause sanctified by duty rather than tainted by ambition. The campaign that follows establishes the pattern that will characterize all of Caesar's Gallic operations. Swift movement, decisive battle, generous treatment of defeated enemies, careful attention to logistics and supply, meticulous record-keeping that will later become the basis for his literary masterpiece. Above all, the combination of tactical brilliance with strategic vision that marks the truly great commanders. At Bibracte, Caesar wins his first major victory. His legions, outnumbered but superbly disciplined, smash the Helvetii migration and force the survivors back to their mountain homes. The battle demonstrates Roman military superiority, but also Caesar's personal command style. His presence in the front lines during the crucial moments, his ability to inspire ordinary soldiers to extraordinary efforts, his gift for turning tactical victories into strategic advantages. But perhaps most importantly, the Helvetii campaign establishes Caesar's reputation as something more than another Roman general. His dispatches to Rome, written with the literary skill that marks all his work, transform routine military operations into epic narrative. Roman readers follow his adventures as they might follow the heroes of Homer, seeing in his victories proof of Roman destiny and divine favor. Yet Caesar's literary genius serves strategic as well as artistic purposes. His commentaries are carefully crafted propaganda designed to justify his increasingly aggressive interpretation of his mandate. Each campaign is presented as a necessary response to barbarian threats, each conquest as a defensive measure, each expansion of Roman territory as the inevitable result of Gallic aggression rather than Roman ambition. The pattern becomes clear as Caesar moves from defensive operations to offensive campaigns. The Belgae in the north threaten Roman allies, so they must be conquered. Germanic tribes cross the Rhine, so Caesar must cross it too and punish them on their own soil. British tribes support Gallic resistance, so Britain itself must be invaded and its warriors taught respect for Roman power. Picture Caesar's famous crossing of the Rhine. Roman engineers working day and night to build a bridge across the great river, their wooden construction spanning waters that no Roman has crossed in living memory. Caesar himself among the workers, sleeves rolled up, hands dirty with honest labor, showing his soldiers that their general shares their burdens as well as their glories. The bridge becomes more than mere engineering. It is a symbol of Roman power, proof that no natural barrier can stop Roman determination, demonstration that Caesar's legions can go anywhere, do anything, conquer anyone. When Germanic tribes see Roman soldiers marching across their sacred river, they understand immediately that the world has changed, that the old boundaries no longer matter, that resistance is futile. But it is the invasion of Britain that truly captures Roman imagination. For Britain lies beyond the edge of the known world, an island wrapped in mist and legend, home to painted warriors who worship strange gods and practice human sacrifice. Caesar's decision to lead his legions across the Channel represents the ultimate act of military audacity, the conquest of the impossible. The first British expedition, launched in 55 BC, is more reconnaissance than conquest. Caesar lands with 2 legions, fights several sharp engagements with British warriors, takes hostages and tribute, then returns to Gaul before winter storms make crossing impossible. It is a limited operation, but its psychological impact is enormous. Caesar has touched the edge of the world and returned to tell the tale. Rome goes wild with celebration. Unprecedented thanksgivings are decreed. Caesar's name is on every tongue, his exploits compared to those of Alexander and Hercules. For the first time since the great conquests of the previous century, Romans have a new hero, a general whose victories expand not just territory, but the boundaries of human possibility. The Second British Invasion, the following year, is a more serious affair. Caesar crosses with 5 legions and cavalry, penetrates deep into the British interior, forces several tribes to submit, establishes Roman influence that will last for generations. Though he does not remain to establish permanent occupation, he has demonstrated that even Britain is not beyond Roman reach. Yet perhaps Caesar's greatest victory comes not through conquest, but through diplomacy. His alliance with Diviciacus, chief druid of the Aedui tribe, gives him influence throughout the Gallic world. For Diviciacus is more than just a tribal leader. He is a priest and philosopher, a man whose word carries weight with Celts from the Atlantic to the Rhine. His partnership with Caesar legitimizes Roman presence in Gaul, transforms foreign occupation into invited protection. Picture Caesar and Diviciacus meeting in the sacred grove where druids conduct their most important ceremonies. 2 of the ancient world's most remarkable men, the Roman general whose legions have conquered half the known world, the Celtic priest whose learning encompasses astronomy and law, mythology and medicine. They speak as equals, recognizing in each other the kind of intelligence that transcends cultural boundaries. Their conversations, conducted in Greek, the common language of educated men throughout the ancient world, range across philosophy and religion, politics and poetry, the nature of divine power and human destiny. Caesar learns from Diviciacus about Celtic beliefs, their understanding of the soul's immortality, their complex relationship with the natural world, knowledge that will serve him well as he seeks to govern peoples whose hearts he must win, as well as their swords. But even as Caesar builds alliances and wins victories, resistance to Roman rule continues to smolder throughout Gaul. The Gallic leaders he has defeated nurse their grievances, plan new rebellions, seek allies among tribes not yet conquered. The greatest of these is Vercingetorix, a young chieftain of the Arverni whose name means great king of warriors, a man whose charisma and courage make him the natural leader of Gallic resistance. The rebellion that Vercingetorix launches in 52 BC represents the greatest threat Caesar has faced in all his years of campaigning. For the first time, most of the Gallic tribes unite under a single leader, coordinate their operations, adopt tactics designed specifically to counter Roman advantages. Instead of meeting the legions in open battle where Roman discipline gives them the edge, the Gauls adopt a scorched earth policy, destroying crops and supplies, attacking Roman foraging parties, forcing Caesar's army to operate in a hostile wasteland. Picture Caesar receiving news of the rebellion while wintering in northern Italy. His face grave as messenger after messenger brings reports of Gallic unity, of Roman outposts under siege, of allied tribes abandoning their treaties and joining the revolt. For the first time in his career, Caesar faces the possibility not just of defeat, but of disaster, the complete loss of everything he has accomplished in 8 years of campaigning. His response reveals both his military genius and his ruthless pragmatism. Rather than attempting to suppress the rebellion piecemeal, Caesar decides to stake everything on a single decisive campaign. He will march his legions into the heart of Gaul, force Vercingetorix to battle, and crush Gallic resistance so completely that it will never rise again. It is the kind of bold gamble that separates great generals from merely competent ones. The campaign that follows becomes the climax of Caesar's military career. A running battle across hundreds of miles, Roman discipline against Gallic courage, systematic siege warfare against desperate resistance. It culminates at Alesia, a Gallic stronghold built on a mountaintop, where Vercingetorix makes his final stand with the flower of Gallic nobility around him. The siege of Alesia becomes a masterpiece of Roman military engineering. Caesar's legions build a double wall around the fortress, one facing inward to contain the defenders, another facing outward to protect against the relief army that must surely come. Between these walls, the fate of Gaul hangs in the balance, Roman methodical persistence against Celtic desperate valor. Picture the climactic moment when the Gallic relief army arrives. 80,000 warriors covering the hillsides like a bronze and iron tide, their war cries echoing across the valley as they prepare to assault the Roman lines. Inside Alesia, Vercingetorix and his men watch from the walls, knowing that this is their last chance. That defeat here means the end of Gallic independence forever. The battle that follows tests Roman discipline to its limits, attacked from two directions simultaneously. Caesar's legions bend but do not break. Their commanders, trained in Caesar's school of warfare, shift reserves where needed, coordinate defense with precision, maintain formation despite overwhelming odds. And in the crucial moment, Caesar himself leads the cavalry charge that breaks the Gallic assault and turns defeat into victory. When the last Gallic warrior surrenders, when Vercingetorix himself emerges from Alesia to place his weapons at Caesar's feet, when the silence of defeat settles over the battlefield, Gaul's independence dies with it. 8 years of patient conquest, careful diplomacy, brilliant generalship have given Rome a new province, Caesar a legendary reputation, and the Republic a general whose power now rivals that of the state itself. The aftermath of Alesia reveals both Caesar's magnanimity and his calculation. He treats most of his prisoners with extraordinary leniency, returning them to their tribes, accepting their submission, transforming enemies into allies through forgiveness rather than fear. But Vercingetorix himself, the symbol of Gallic resistance, must be saved for Caesar's triumph, must be displayed in chains before the Roman people as proof of their general's achievement. Yet even as Caesar savors his victory, news arrives from Rome that changes everything. Crassus is dead, killed fighting the Parthians at Carrhae, his head sent as a trophy to the Parthian king, his legions destroyed, his wealth scattered to the desert winds. The triumvirate that has ruled Rome for nearly a decade is broken, and with it the delicate balance that has kept the peace between Caesar and Pompey. Picture Caesar receiving this news in his headquarters tent, surrounded by maps of Gaul, dispatches from Rome, plans for the next campaign. The lamplight flickers across his face as he absorbs the implications of Crassus's death, understands immediately that the political world he left behind in Rome has been transformed, that his return will not be the triumph he anticipated, but the beginning of a new and more dangerous phase of his career. For without Crassus to mediate between them, Caesar and Pompey must become rivals. The Republic cannot contain two men of such ambition, such achievement, such popular support. One must yield to the other, or both must destroy the system that created them. The Gallic Wars are ending, but the Roman Civil War is about to begin. Rest now in the rhythm of marching legions, the steady tramp of hobnailed boots on ancient roads. Feel the weight of conquest, the burden of victory, the price of glory measured in blood and gold. Let the sounds of ancient warfare fade into the peaceful silence of historical memory, carrying you towards sleep on the gentle tide of time.